I still remember the day I realized that knowing English and speaking English were two completely different things. Before I came to Canada, I believed my English was good enough because I had studied it for many years. I knew grammar, I could read simple books, and I understood many words. But when I arrived, everything changed. People spoke so fast that it sounded like one long sentence. I smiled most of the time because I did not know how to answer. Deep inside, I felt disappointed and wondered if I would ever become fluent. One day, I walked into a coffee shop to order a drink. The cashier asked me a very simple question, but I could not understand a single word. I asked her to repeat it, and even then, I still did not understand. People were waiting behind me, and I started feeling nervous. My heart was beating fast, and I just answered with the first word that came into my mind. When I left the coffee shop, I was not upset because of the mistake. I was upset because I knew I had spent years studying English, yet I could not have a simple conversation. That evening, I sat alone and asked myself an important question. What am I doing wrong? I realized that I had spent too much time studying English like a school subject instead of using it like a real language. I memorized grammar rules, translated every sentence into my native language, and tried to remember hundreds of vocabulary words. But I almost never listened to real conversations, and I almost never spoke English out loud. That was the moment everything changed for me. Instead of buying another grammar book, I decided to change my daily habits. I promised myself that I would spend at least 20 minutes every day listening to English, no matter how busy I was. Sometimes I listened while cooking, sometimes while cleaning my apartment, and sometimes while walking outside. At first, I understood only a few words, but I refused to quit. Every single day, my ears became a little stronger, and little by little, English stopped sounding like noise. Then I discovered another mistake I had been making for years. Every time I learned a new word, I wrote only the word itself. A few days later, I forgot it. So I changed my method completely. Instead of learning single words, I learned complete sentences that people actually use in everyday life. I noticed that when I learned a sentence, I also learned grammar, pronunciation, and vocabulary at the same time. My memory became much better without trying so hard. Another habit completely changed the way I learned English. I stopped translating everything into my native language. In the beginning, this felt impossible because translating had become automatic, but I forced myself to think directly in English. Every morning, I described the things around me. I looked at my room and quietly said, "The bed is clean. The window is open. I need to make breakfast." They were simple sentences, but they trained my brain to think faster in English. There were many days when I wanted to give up. Sometimes I watched an English video and understood almost nothing. Sometimes I spoke to someone and made embarrassing mistakes. There were moments when I thought maybe learning English was simply too difficult for me. But every time I felt like quitting, I reminded myself why I started. I wanted to communicate with people, build a better future, and feel confident. That goal became stronger than my fear. One of the smartest things I ever did was stop trying to study for hours. I learned that consistency is much more powerful than motivation. Even on busy days, I never skipped my 20 minutes of English practice. Some days I listened to a short story. Other days I repeated sentences aloud. Sometimes I shadowed native speakers by copying their pronunciation. Those small daily habits slowly created big results that I could not see at first. After a few months, I noticed something surprising. I no longer translated every sentence in my head. I began understanding English naturally. I could watch simple videos without constantly reading subtitles, and I started recognizing common expressions that people use every day. It was not because I had suddenly become smarter. It was because my brain had finally become familiar with the language through daily practice. One afternoon, I had a conversation with a stranger that lasted almost 5 minutes. It was not a perfect conversation. I made grammar mistakes, paused to think, and sometimes searched for the right word. But for the first time, I was not afraid. I realized that people cared much more about understanding me than about my mistakes. That conversation gave me more confidence than any English textbook ever could. I also learned that repeating the same material was much more useful than always looking for something new. Instead of watching 10 different videos, I watched one good video several times. Each time, I noticed new words, better pronunciation, and expressions I had missed before. Repetition was not boring anymore. It became one of the fastest ways to improve my English. Looking back, I understand that fluency did not happen because of one secret trick. It happened because of many small habits repeated every single day. Listening, speaking, reading, thinking in English, and never giving up became part of my daily routine. I stopped worrying about being perfect and started focusing on making progress, even if that progress was very small. If someone asked me today how to learn English faster, I would give simple advice. Listen to English every day. Learn complete sentences instead of isolated words. Think in English whenever you can. Speak, even if you are afraid of making mistakes. Do not wait until your English is perfect, because that day will never come. Confidence grows only when you start using the language. Today, when I remember that nervous person standing in the coffee shop, I almost smile. I never imagined that one day I would be able to have conversations in English, understand movies much better, and even share my experience with other learners. The journey was not easy, but every difficult moment taught me something valuable. If I had given up after those first embarrassing experiences, none of this would have happened. So, if you are learning English and sometimes feel discouraged, I want you to remember my story. I was not born speaking English, and I did not become fluent overnight. I improved one small step at a time. Some days were frustrating, and some days were exciting, but I kept moving forward. If my story teaches you one lesson, let it be this. You do not need to be the smartest person to learn English. You only need to be the person who refuses to quit. Thank you so much for watching my story. I hope it showed you that learning English is possible for everyone. If I could improve my English one small step at a time, you can too. Keep listening, keep practicing, and never be afraid to make mistakes. Every mistake helps you become a better English speaker. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new lesson. Share this video with a friend who is learning English, and let me know in the comments what part of my story inspired you the most. Until next time, keep practicing English every day, and have a wonderful day.